Hey guys, September 4th, 2025 here with your daily watch list video. Let's just quickly recap because I didn't do a after hours recap video of kind of what happened in the market today. Simply put, it was, I thought, a fantastic day in the market. You know, kind of when you just zoom back out and let's talk about the NASDAQ really quick, in particular the NQ. Now we have officially gone sideways for just over a month, right? So this is the kind of action that I've been, wanting to see after a really big move up in the market, right? You just kind of start to frustrate people. You begin to build higher lows. You're still hanging out above key moving averages. But the important part today, and really even yesterday, is that, the semiconductor space, while there was some selling yesterday, you get a really nice report from CRDO and obviously a pretty big gap up, still finish up 7.5%. And then AVGO today and after hours, you get 306 close, and now all of a sudden you get a gap up into new all-time highs as well. I'm a little bit more on the weary side about buying any gap ups on earnings. Really, this quarter has not been the quarter for it, but looking for continuation setups seems to be the right move. Apart from CRDO and AVGO, obviously posting two really nice quarters. Today I was kind of noticing some buying in ASML, and then obviously, a little bit more of a gap up overnight, and that's really nice to see, holding the 200-day. LRCX, same deal, and these were some of the names that were, kind of selling off over the last few days. KLAC, again, another one selling off a little bit past few days, but bouncing back, fairly nicely here. So I don't want to just write the sector off. I think so long as AVGO, CRDO is acting well, and then and Nvidia can hold on to the 50-day and reclaim it tomorrow. I think that could actually bode really well for the sector. But more importantly, an Nvidia could really take a longer break. I have no problem with that, as so long as you've got something like Apple finally deciding to wake up, and it looks like this thing is wanting to continue its uptrend, and that would be really good for the market. And then obviously look at Google, this recent, absolutely beautiful gap up with a little bit of continuation today. Nothing really crazy, nothing that I even feel like buying personally, but obviously this is really good when one of the biggest companies in the world is off to the races. And then look at Amazon. This thing looks about as primed and ready to go make a new all-time high as any of these names. So won't be too surprised if this one's living up at $250 pretty soon. So, part of me goes, well, if Microsoft wants to take a little bit bigger of a break, if Nvidia wants to take a little bit of a break, if Meta, maybe wants to take a bit of a break, even though this as well gapped up. I don't see anything wrong with that if this name and Microsoft and Nvidia just want to continue to digest, so long as a Google, and Amazon, and Apple, and potentially Tesla decides to start waking up. I think that this thing has digested for long enough. I'm about ready to get myself re-involved in a Tesla tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow. Obviously, importantly, we have non-farm payroll tomorrow. That is before market open. That's going to be pretty important. We will see if, depending on how non-farm payroll comes in, it'll play into, will there actually be rate cuts in September? I believe that would be on the 17th. So, we'll kind of see how that narrative ends up playing out based on NFP numbers tomorrow. But ultimately, you've got some sectors that are acting well, the home builders in particular. Pulte looks like, all-time high is in the cards here pretty soon, continuing to act well. LEN is another one. Toll is another one. BLDR is another one. Obviously, Home Depot is another one that would be in that kind of home building sector. BLDR is another one that's acting fantastic. And there was one more that I can't quite remember. That would be, let me see. Is it DHI? I think, yeah, DHI, KB Homes. I mean, these things all look very, very identical, and they're all working their way above the 200. Some obviously better than others. Some looking, fantastic, like, they're right at all-time highs, stones throws away. So that's really good. That's a sector that's waking up. Solars is, I think TAN is the fifth leading ETF this year. Obviously, that's an ETF where a bunch of the stocks had recently gotten beaten up, but as Sedge, the 200-day is curling back up. This thing looks pretty constructive, and NXT looks pretty constructive here near an all-time high. FSLR is not looking too bad. And then Run also is another one that looks pretty good. And then for a Chinese solar name, DQ is another one that looks pretty good. So, solars are waking up. Home builders are waking up. Semiconductors had a nice day today. Cybersecurity stocks is beginning to work its way back around. PanW back above the 200. That is exactly what we want to see. CrowdStrike hanging in there, just above the 200 simple moving average. Very, very tight against the 200. Continues to find these lower wicks, so effectively support right at that level. Maybe not necessarily a name that I need to own, but kind of speaking to the sector. And then, you've got the clothing stocks. AEO, obviously a really super massive day today. Pushed even further in after hours, 19 and a half bucks. I mean, that's just, crazy to see, but congratulations if anybody owned this name prior to earnings. Macy's is another one, with a little bit of follow through today. So, gap up, high volume close, continuation today. I mean, beautiful, beautiful stuff going on. You just kind of got to find it. And then obviously, can we even say more about this monster? I did a terrible, terrible job trailing this one. I've got all sorts of regrets for ever selling it from $100. But, here we go. Got right back through the high volume close for earnings yesterday, and then continuation today, new all-time high. Just fantastic. ANET, same deal. What can you say? I mean, there is just a load of good stuff going on in the market right now. So hard to be bearish, hard to be negative when things are working so well. Yes, some of this like kind of crappier speculative names have really unwound, and that's kind of what happens when the market chops around. Big move for QS, gave a majority of it back. Big move for Joby gave a bunch of it back. There was a big move for TSSI, gave all of it back, and that was kind of my expectation with this one. But that is just what has happened, and I think that's fine. While a bunch of names in the home building sector and solars were looking pretty well, you had a bit of a pause in the names that have already done really well. Like a Hut, a bit of a pause. Iron, a bit of a pause. Nothing truly wrong with these names. They kind of need to build out a cleaner, maybe a high type flag over the next few weeks. So we will see if that can happen over the next few weeks. Anything else that really felt notable? Gold took a bit of a breather, but not even anything too crazy. I still think gold looks perfectly fine. Ethereum gave back most of the move today. And that's kind of to be expected when you think about positioning in Ethereum. Very crowded. I personally won't be too surprised if we break this that 4250 level, and then come down to 4,000, maybe even 3,800, something like that. Seems like could be totally in the cards, but no real opinion here if it gets going or not. But just really awesome action today in the market. With that, we'll kind of run through the names on the shorter watch list. I don't want to have too many names on watch and kind of be like a bobblehead with NFP. You kind of want to know exactly where you want to be, and let's just kind of get through those names. I don't know that ANET is buyable just yet, but I will keep this thing on radar. You're effectively at an all-time high, which is awesome to see. And then, I'm hopeful that, an AVGO can really, support that semi sector and the data center build out sector going forward. Tesla is another one. Obviously, we just talked about it. Super, super consolidation. I mean, I don't know how much longer a stock can consolidate for, but we are tight. And every time you come down, you build higher lows, higher lows, higher lows. So my expectation, as soon as tomorrow we start to take out today's highs, effective, effectively holding the 200 simple moving average. This is a name that I need to find myself in um, going forward. So it is one that I will absolutely keep an eye on. Love the action in Shopify today. Don't know that I've got a setup to buy this thing just yet, but will keep an eye on it as well. But again, not something that I'm super comfortable buying, right through this level. Alibaba, another one. We did kind of have a little bit of a ugly down day today, but we are gapping up a little bit overnight. I'm okay potentially even buying this thing as a higher low setup, so long as we're taking out today's highs, 134 and a quarter. Sometimes stocks like to do this. They run up, they pull back, they shake a bunch of the people out, and then all of a sudden you just take out that high, and anybody who got shaken out has to rebuy it back. PDD I already own. A little bit of a weaker close today, but really nothing wrong with it. Kind of happy with what it's doing here, just kind of chopping along. I do expect that if PDD can get going over, 133 and a half, that, we could be in a nice stage 2 uptrend for some of these Chinese equities. And then obviously SE, being your international leader, this thing has been a leader for, it seems like a really long time now. Really nice to see from this name. And then the two names that I'd love to also find myself in, which one I already own, but I love the consolidation here. We start to take out that 75 60s level on ARK. I would add it as if I didn't own it, so I would effectively buy a new position on it, and then obviously keep my shares from 59 bucks. That is something that I will be focused on to see if I can add. I mean, we are as tight can be on this ARK. And then Dutch Bros is the other one. Love what this thing has done. You got the gap up on earnings. You had just a clean little pullback right into the 200-day on falling volume. No real sellers in here. You got the ramp right back up, and then here you go. You're just tightening up again. Just a few days in a row. Finding support on the rising 10, finding support on the rising 200 on the 60-minute. You start to take out yesterday's highs, which is basically 72 bucks. Over 72 good, below 72, maybe not so good. So yeah, this is one that I will absolutely keep my eyes on, about as tight as can be, like I said. So yeah, that's kind of about it for now. Actually, excuse me, one more. How could I forget? ALAB. I was talking about this thing during pre-market prep, and I was talking about this name going through like that 180, 181 level. And it did that really, really well today. So anybody who got themselves involved in this thing, congratulations. Really nice move for an ALAB. But, just kind of looking at this consolidation, I don't think that, we've missed it yet. I'm hopeful that, NFP will get kind of like a morning washout, and then I will be looking for any kind of pullback on ALAB and then a 620 setup from there. But, ALAB's another one that looks absolutely fantastic. Will not be taking this off the radar. Like I said, you don't really want to have too much bobblehead. There's stocks that are acting great: solar sector, FSLR, Sedge, Run, NXT, the semi sector. Maybe NVIDIA reclaims the 50. Maybe AMD can perk back up. AVGO is going to have a gap up, maybe CRDO in a few days. So that's nice to see. You've got home builders out there. I'm not in any of them. I don't see a perfect setup for them. And then, you've got all these nice still tech names just hanging in there. And obviously cybersecurity, if it can continue higher. So there is a lot. Obviously, a lot of this is kind of linchpin on NFP tomorrow. So let's just take it one day at a time. Congratulations to the AEO holders, and congratulations to the open door holders. It's definitely some wild price action out there, but ultimately, there's a lot to be focused on right now. Don't just get too dejected because, the market's been digesting for a month. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. I was looking at the NAAIM survey today, and it looks like active money managers kind of sold some recently, and so you are not crowded in terms of NAIM. I am looking forward to looking at COT data for this weekend, but I don't see a ton to be negative about. If non-farm payrolls comes in at about in line, then I would expect we get at least a quarter basis point cut this month. So, and I think that we could easily run up into that narrative. But if earnings keep beating, and that's what companies are doing, like if companies keep beating on earnings and raising guidance, which is what a lot of companies are doing, and if inflation's not really going to be an issue, I just don't see what's stopping this market. I said it a few months ago. If banks are at highs, and I didn't even mention banks like Bank of America, JP Morgan, foreign banks. Banks are just on fire right now. So if banks are doing well and semiconductors are doing well, you're not going to take the market down. That's just a fact. So I don't really see a reason to be negative. I did say yesterday that some semis were, maybe a too many for comfort. We're living underneath the 50, but you can see how quickly one day of price action can really change everything, and you got to remain flexible in your thinking. When the evidence changes, you have to change. We have gone sideways for a month. Price action is still clean. Leaders are still making all-time highs, which is important. Banking names are still hanging out near highs. New sectors and new themes are coming to life. So, be bullish, and you're gonna make more money being bullish than you will be being bearish. So, sometimes the bearish narrative might sound super smart, and you kind of stay out of harm's way when things go south. But at the same time, when the getting's good, just make sure you're paying attention to where money's going, where money's leaving, and do your best to execute when the market is going up. So anyway, hopefully this video finds you guys well. I will see you guys all tomorrow for pre-market prep and in the room during broadcast, guys. Cheers.